Hey, Midnight Horrorverse fans. Get lost in 35 spine-chilling psychological horror tales narrated through haunting rain. Expect twisted psyches, unsettling vibes, and sleepless nights. Hit subscribe for your dose of creepy storytelling. We went on a company retreat, the kind meant to build trust, encourage bonding, all that garbage. They picked a remote cabin in the woods. No signal, no distractions. It was fine at first. Bonfires, cheap wine, awkward team building games. One night, I wandered off. I needed space. I always get like that around people. Followed a trail through the trees, just long enough to clear my head. But when I came back, everyone was gone. Not just inside the cabin, I mean gone. Their bags were there, their food, their clothes, but no people. Phones dead, cars still parked out front. I thought it was a prank. Or maybe I wandered further than I thought and ended up at a different cabin. But every drawer had my co-workers' stuff. Every bed had the name tags we'd made. That was 5 days ago. I still hear the laughter at night. But it's not their voices anymore. It's distorted. Wrong. Like something else is mimicking them badly. Yesterday, I found footprints in the dirt around the cabin. Bare feet, leading in circles. I keep the door locked now. Not because I think it'll help, but because whatever's out there likes to knock first. My girlfriend kept telling me I talked in my sleep. Strange things. She said I muttered in a voice that didn't sound like mine. I laughed it off until she recorded it. At 3:13 a.m., I started humming. A strange, haunting lullaby. Then I whispered a series of numbers. Then I laughed. But the laugh wasn't mine. It was deep, guttural, wet. It sounded like something trying to impersonate a human. Trying and failing. I played it backward. I don't know why, just instinct. That's when I heard it. My voice, clear as day, screaming, begging for help. I stopped sleeping for a while. Then one night, I woke up outside, on the lawn. The door was locked from the inside. Last week, my girlfriend left me. Said she woke up one night and I was standing over her, humming that same tune, smiling, with tears running down my face. She said I didn't blink, just stared. I set up a mic in my room, let it run overnight. This time, I didn't speak. Something else did. It said, "He's almost gone." It began during my first semester of college. I was dealing with insomnia, pulling all-nighters, living off caffeine and stress. That's when the shadows started showing up. It wasn't a full figure at first, just a dark smudge in the corner of my vision. I saw it in lectures, in the library, even in broad daylight. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, but every time I blinked, it was closer. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. Sleep deprivation can do that. But then I started counting. The fewer blinks, the slower it approached. When I went an entire minute without blinking, it would stop altogether. The moment my eyelids closed, even for a split second, it would jump a little closer. Closer than it should be able to. I tried to sleep, but it was worse at night. I could feel it hovering by my bed. I'd blink in my dreams and wake up gasping. One night, I dared to open my eyes after a nap. It was crouched right over me, just inches from my face, but as soon as my eyelids fluttered, it vanished again. I installed cameras in my room, reviewed the footage. At exactly 3:08 a.m., the camera went static for half a second. When the video resumed, I was no longer alone. There was a figure standing at the foot of my bed, tall, black eyes, no mouth, just watching. I sent the clip to a friend. He told me there was nothing there, just a glitch. That's when I realized it doesn't appear on video, only in the moment between blinks, in that instant where your eyes close and you trust the world to stay the same when they open. I haven't slept in 3 days, but I don't think that matters anymore. This morning, I blinked, and it didn't move. It's not getting closer, because it's already here. My sister died in a car accident last December. We were close. She always texted me, "Made it home safe," whenever she drove anywhere. After the funeral, I kept scrolling through her old messages. I couldn't bring myself to delete the thread. Then, 2 nights later, I got a text from her number. "Made it home safe." I stared at the screen in disbelief until it went dark. It wasn't from a spoofed number. It was from her contact, with our whole conversation thread intact. Called the number, straight to voicemail. I tried to convince myself it was a glitch, a scheduled message, something logical, you know? But they kept coming. Always late at night. Always the same phrase. "Made it home safe." Sometimes with variations like, "Got home just fine. Don't worry, I'm back." Never more than one per night. I asked the phone company to investigate. They said the line was deactivated. They couldn't trace it. They even suggested I file a police report if it continued. Last night, I got a message that was different. "Not home yet. Still driving. You'll see me soon." I haven't left my room today. Every time I hear a car outside, I freeze. Shadows don't behave that way. I always thought that. Then mine started acting weird. It lagged behind when I walked, stretched in directions it shouldn't. I thought it was just the light, maybe my imagination, but it got worse. It would twitch when I was still, reach across the floor like it was trying to grab something. Once, it pointed at the closet door. That night, I had a dream of something crawling out of it. I filmed myself sleeping, watched the footage. Around 3 a.m., my shadow stood up. I didn't move, just the shadow. It walked to the mirror and vanished. The next night, it didn't come back. For a while, I didn't cast any shadow at all. Then it reappeared, only now it was wrong. Taller, thinner. It doesn't move when I do. It watches. And sometimes, see it blink. There's no apartment above mine. That's the first thing the building manager told me when I moved in. I live on the top floor, but 3 weeks ago, I started hearing footsteps overhead. They weren't occasional creaks, no, they were deliberate. Slow pacing, sometimes sprinting from one end of the ceiling to the other at 3 a.m. I called the manager, and he said it was probably the old pipes. I knew it wasn't. Pipes don't mimic human movement. One night, I got a broom and banged hard on the ceiling. Immediately it stopped. Then I heard something new, dragging, like someone slowly pulling heavy furniture right above me. I checked outside. No maintenance trucks, no ladders, nothing. I climbed to the roof myself, flashlight in hand. It was empty, cold, and still. No footprints, just gravel and an eerie silence that felt expectant. When I went back inside, everything seemed normal, until I saw the dust on my ceiling. It had been disturbed. Long streaks, like fingers had been pressed from above, tracing the outline of where I sleep. I haven't slept in that room since. It started subtly. I would catch my reflection holding eye contact a moment too long after I moved. At first, I chalked it up to poor lighting or tired eyes, but the feeling kept growing. That uncanny sensation that something was off. One night, brushing my teeth, I turned to rinse and caught a flicker of movement. My reflection hadn't turned with me. It was still staring straight ahead, eyes wide, lips curled in a slight, unnatural grin. I froze. When I looked again, everything was normal. Maybe I was seeing things, I told myself. The next night, it happened again. And again. Eventually, I couldn't convince myself it was nothing. I started testing it. Quick, unpredictable movements, looking away, then snapping my gaze back. The reflection always caught up, but there was always a moment, a fraction of a second, where I knew it lagged, where I knew it was thinking. Last week, covered the mirrors in my apartment, every one of them. It felt stupid, childish, but I needed to stop seeing it. I even draped a blanket over the bathroom mirror. That night, I woke up to the sound of glass breaking. The bathroom door was ajar. I could see the mirror. The blanket was on the floor, shredded. Now I sleep with the lights on. Not because I'm afraid of the dark, but because when it's dark, I can see my reflection in the windows. And sometimes, just sometimes, it smiles at me before I do. It started after I moved into my new apartment. Every night around 2 a.m, I heard a faint voice coming from the vent above my bed. At first, I thought it was just a neighbor, but it wasn't words, just breathing, raspy, labored. I asked the landlord if anyone had lived here before me. He paused, then said the last tenant broke their lease, moved out in a hurry. One night, I decided to talk back, just a whisper. "Who are you?" The breathing stopped. Silence. Then, so faint, I thought I imagined it. "I'm still here." I unscrewed the vent the next day. Nothing, just dust and old wires. But that night, the voice was louder, closer. "Why did you open the door?" I hadn't. The next morning, the vent was sealed shut, like it had never been touched. My tools were gone. The screws weren't on the floor. Last night, I woke up choking, air thick with dust. Something was in the room, whispering in my ear. "You let me out." I was going through old boxes in my parents' attic when I found it. A VHS tape labelled Happy 7th Birthday. I don't remember that party. My memories from that year are blurry at best. I was a quiet kid, kept to myself, but the tape intrigued me. I hooked up an old VCR. The tape began with the usual home video jitters. Kids laughing, balloons, a cake. Then I saw myself. Frozen. Not smiling. Not blinking. Just staring at the camera. In the background, my parents stood beside a tall, faceless man in a black suit. They were crying. The man was holding a knife. He cut the cake. No one clapped. The other kids had vanished. The tape jumped. Static. Then it showed me, alone in the yard, digging something into the dirt with my bare hands. My fingers were bleeding. The tape ended with a black screen and one sentence. Try again next year. I've lived in this house for 7 years. It's not big, just a one-bedroom cottage with a basement I barely use. A few weeks ago, while moving some boxes down there, I noticed something strange, a faint draft coming from behind the water heater. I hadn't felt it before. Curious, I shifted things around and discovered a seam in the concrete. It didn't look like a natural crack. I tapped it. It sounded hollow. After a few days of internal debate, I borrowed a sledgehammer from a friend. It took hours, but behind that wall, found a door. A real wooden door, old, dry-rotted, and shut tight from the inside. When I forced it open, I found another room. It was small, maybe 10 by 10 feet, no windows. Just a single chair facing the wall. And on the wall, hundreds of tally marks, all carved by hand. Some were deep, aggressive, desperate. I called my friend, a contractor, to inspect it. He swore the space didn't exist on the blueprints. As we left the room, he stopped and stared at the chair. "Wasn't that facing the wall before?" he asked. It was now pointing at the doorway. That night, I dreamed of sitting in that chair, unable to move, just carving one more tally. One more. One more. I woke up with my hands covered in splinters. The chair is now in the middle of the room, facing up the stairs. It started when I saw myself across the street. I waved, instinctively. He didn't wave back. A few days later, I got home to find my keys didn't work. When I knocked, I heard someone say, "Just a sec." It was my voice. I backed away, called the police. They searched the place, found nothing. No one. My things were slightly out of place, but nothing big, just off. Over the next week, I kept catching glimpses of him. Me. Same clothes. Same walk, but colder. Still. Then I got a letter, handwritten. No return address, just one sentence. "You stole my life. Now I don't sleep, because I know he's watching, waiting for me to blink, to give it back." It started after a car crash. Minor, no serious injuries, but I had a concussion. Doctors said memory loss was possible, but it would fade. But it didn't. So, every night, around 2:30 a.m., I wake up and I have no idea who I am. My name, my job, my face in the mirror. It's all alien. It only lasts about 10 minutes, but in those 10 minutes, I panic. I run through the house trying to find clues about who lives here. Photos, wallets, emails. I examine everything like a detective investigating someone else's life. Here's the terrifying part. Nothing ever feels like it belongs to me. Even when memory returns, there's this lingering doubt. One night, I found a note on the fridge. It wasn't in my handwriting. Don't trust the memories. They're not yours. I thought maybe I left it for myself in a moment of paranoia. But then new notes started appearing. He's still inside. Look in the basement. You are the copy. I haven't gone to the basement yet, because part of me wonders if I'll find him, the original, or maybe something worse. Maybe I'll find a room full of people who all thought they were me. When I was a kid, I had a recurring nightmare. A tall, thin man would stand in the corner of my room at night, just watching, never moving, never blinking, just watching. I'd scream and my parents would rush in, but he'd vanish the moment the door opened. They chalked it up to imagination, said it was normal for kids. Eventually, the dreams stopped, and I moved on, until last month. I was staying in a hotel on a work trip, jet-lagged, half asleep. I saw him again, standing at the foot of the bed, watching. I blinked, and he was gone. I laughed it off. Stress, fatigue, memory resurfing. But now, it's every night. Different hotels, my apartment. I'll wake up suddenly, heart racing, and see him standing just out of reach. Sometimes reflected in the window, sometimes in the shadows of the hallway. Last night, I snapped a photo when I thought I saw him. The picture is pitch black, except for the faint outline of a face. Too long, no eyes, just a blank presence where a face should be. Not human, not quite. I tried deleting the photo, but every time I checked my phone, it's still there, a little closer than before. He's not in the corner anymore. He's beside the bed. My childhood home had old wooden floors. They creaked like crazy, and every night I'd hear sounds beneath them. My parents always said it was the house settling, but as a kid, I was sure something was living underneath. Something smart, something that mimicked the noises we made. If I dropped a spoon, minutes later I'd hear a faint metallic clink mirrored under the floor. It wasn't until after my dad passed away that I inherited the house. I hadn't been back in years. The floorboards had warped with time, and I planned to renovate. Pulled up a section in the hallway and found a hollow space no one had told me about. There was a wooden crawl space, barely 3 feet high, filled with what looked like old furniture, broken toys, scraps of clothing, some of it mine, from when I was small, and bones. Not animal bones. I called the police, of course, but the next night, before they arrived, I heard the sounds again. Scraping, crawling, breathing. But this time, it wasn't under the floorboards. It was in the walls. That night, I dreamed of my childhood, only I wasn't me. I was the thing underneath, watching. and I remember feeling jealous. It started with a sound, faint, crackling static. I thought it was just the pipes or an old appliance, but it grew louder over time. Eventually, I traced it to the linen closet. Behind a stack of towels, there was a door I had never noticed before. It blended with the wall, no handle, just a push panel. Curiosity got the better of me. I pressed it. Inside was a small, windowless room. Everything was bathed in a grey, flickering static. It didn't make sense. There was no TV, no electronics, but the air shimmered and buzzed like I was inside a broken signal. And then the whispers started. At first I couldn't make them out, just breathy murmurs. But night after night I returned, unable to stop myself. The whispers got clearer. They started saying my name. Then they said other names. My mother, my brother, my ex. They told me things I shouldn't know. Private things, secrets, regrets, things people only admit in dreams or deathbeds. I stopped sleeping. I spent more and more time in my room. My skin started to itch constantly, like it was being erased, pixel by pixel. Last night, I stepped in fully. The door closed behind me. The static was everywhere, in my ears, in my bones, and the whispers turned into screams. They weren't trying to talk to me. They were warning me. Now, I can't find the door. It happened at 2:47 a.m. My phone rang. Caller ID said it was me. My number. My name. I thought it was a spoof. I answered. There was silence. Then static. Then my voice. Broken. Hoarse. Almost whispering. It said, "Don't go to sleep. I'm almost there." I hung up. I checked the call log. It was gone, like it had never happened. I tried calling my number back, straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Slow, deliberate. 3 knocks. I didn't move. Then my phone buzzed again. A voicemail from my number. My voice again. "You already let me in." I turned to look at the window. There was a shape outside, a silhouette of someone who looked exactly like me, grinning. Don't answer calls anymore, but they keep coming. It started with scratching, light, rhythmic, like a mouse, I figured. But the sound moved, slowly, deliberately, up the length of the wall and across the ceiling. I'd tap the drywall and it would pause, then continue. Exterminators came, said there was no sign of pests, no droppings, no entry points. I'd hear it every night between 1 and 3 a.m. Sometimes a muffled thump, once a whisper. Yes, a whisper. It was too quiet to make out, just a breathy hush, like someone murmuring into insulation. I drilled a small hole in the wall and pushed a tiny inspection camera inside. There was something looking back at me. Not an animal, not even a person. I don't think. Had too many fingers, skin like paper soaked in oil. The camera cut out before I could see more. I yanked it out and patched the hole, heart slamming in my chest. The noises got louder after that. Last night, I woke up to drywall dust falling onto my bed. There were 5 small holes above me, like fingers trying to push through. I don't think it wants out. I think it wants in. I started getting voicemails from an unknown number about a month ago. No caller ID, just recordings. At first, I thought it was a prank, until I heard the voice. It was mine. Not a recording I remembered making. My voice, yes, but panicked, rambling, sometimes whispering. In one, I heard myself crying, begging, "Don't let it in! Please, please, don't let it in!" In another, I just kept repeating my name over and over like I was trying to remember who I was, or prove I was still me in some way. I called the number back, disconnected. I took the recordings to the phone company. They said they couldn't trace them, that they might be spoofed or something else. Last night, I got a new one. This time, I wasn't speaking. I was screaming for a long time, in silence. Then a new voice, low and calm, said, "This one remembers too much." I've stopped answering my phone altogether, but sometimes I catch myself mouthing the voicemails in my sleep, perfectly in sync. I took a night security job through an agency. The address was vague, just coordinates. A half-hour drive into the hills. When I arrived, the building was nondescript. No sign, no logos. Just a concrete box with fluorescent lights that buzzed constantly. My job? Sit at the front desk, watch the cameras, don't go past the second hallway. No one ever entered, no one ever left. But every night, exactly at 3:14 a.m., the elevator doors opened on their own. No one stepped out, no one stepped in, but the camera feeds flickered during that time, just static. One night, I broke the rule. I walked down the second hallway. It seemed to go on forever, longer than the building should allow. I passed the doors that weren't labelled, some of them leaking light around the edges, others were cold to the touch. I heard voices behind one, whispering in a language I didn't know but somehow understood. When I returned to the front desk, the time was 6:29 a.m. My shift ends at 5. I had missed 2 hours. There's no record of the facility anywhere. I checked city permits, satellite images, tax rolls, nothing. The coordinates point to an empty lot. And yet I go back, every night. Because every time I try to quit, get a letter in the mail, in my own handwriting, begging me not to. Everyone I know started calling me Jason. Friends, co-workers, even my own mother. But my name is not Jason. Never has been. I correct them, and they apologize, act embarrassed, then do it again minutes later. At first I thought it was a weird joke. Then I noticed my emails were addressed to Jason. My ID still had my correct name, but my work badge didn't. My prescriptions changed. Even my voicemail said, "You've reached Jason, leave a message." I went to the DMV to sort it out, and they told me there's no record of anyone with my actual name living at my address. Just Jason. I confronted my mother, showed her baby pictures, old report cards, anything with my name on it. She stared at them like they were puzzles. "You were always Jason," she said. "You must be confused again." Again? That word stuck with me. Broke into her attic and found old boxes, photos, documents, journals, all from a life that didn't match mine, and one file, thin, hidden in a locked drawer, labelled with my real name. Inside was a single photo of me, but beneath it, in red ink, someone had written, "Erased." The rent was suspiciously low for a studio in this part of town, a fact the landlord, Mr. Silas, seemed to dismiss with a wave of his bony hand and a smile that didn't quite reach his pale, watery eyes. "Some tenants find it unsettling," was all he offered by way of explanation. I scoffed internally. Unsettling? It was just an apartment. I soon learned what he meant. The first few nights were uneventful, the usual creaks and groans of an old building. Then came the third night. I woke abruptly, not to a sound, but to a profound sense of wrongness. The darkness in the room felt thick, almost viscous, pressing in on me. Then I saw it. Faint, pale rectangle of light, bleeding from the far wall. It outlined a doorway where no doorway should have been. It wasn't a harsh electric glow, but a soft internal luminescence, like moonlight trapped within a frame. Hesitantly, I got out of bed. The air grew colder as I approached the anomaly. The light intensified, revealing not another room, but a space identical to my own bedroom. Same worn rug, same mismatched bedside lamps, same unsettlingly blank picture frame on the wall. Except the bed in that room was empty, the covers neatly tucked, and in the center of the far wall of that room, another identical doorway pulsed with the same ethereal light. A cold dread coiled in my stomach. This wasn't right. I backed away slowly, my breath catching in my throat. As I retreated, the doorway in my room flickered, the light stuttered, and then it was gone, leaving only the familiar, comforting darkness of my small studio. But it returned the next night, brighter this time, the edges of the doorway sharper. It felt closer too, as if the wall itself had subtly shifted. I started sleeping with the lights on, a pathetic attempt to ward off the impossible. It didn't work. Each night the unblinking room appeared, its silent invitation growing more insistent. I began to hear things, faint whispers, like someone speaking my name from a great distance, carried on a breath of icy air that emanated from the glowing frame. I tried to tell friends, but the words caught in my throat, a sense of profound unease silencing me. Now, the doorway is almost at the foot of my bed. I can see the faint outline of the next doorway within the next room, and sometimes, just for a fleeting moment, I think I see a figure standing there, waiting, unmoving, unblinking. The sun beat down with a cruel indifference, baking the earth until it cracked in angry fissures. Weeks bled into months without a drop, the sky a vast, empty canvas of relentless blue. We rationed water, our voices growing hoarse, our hopes dwindling with the shrinking reservoirs. Then, one sweltering afternoon, it began. Not the violent downpour we'd prayed for, but a soft, almost hesitant drizzle. Collective sigh of relief swept through our small town. We rushed outside, faces upturned, letting the cool droplets kiss our parched skin. It felt like a miracle, but then we noticed the taste. It was metallic, faintly coppery, like old pennies left out in the rain. We dismissed it as dust, the parched atmosphere clinging to the moisture. The next morning, Mrs. Henderson, our town's avid gardener, let out a blood-curdling scream. Her prize-winning roses, usually a delicate pink, were now a shocking, deep crimson, their velvety petals heavy with the strange rain, and the birds, those that had gathered at the puddles forming in the streets, lay still and silent, their tiny bodies unnaturally slick. Fear began to ripple through the town. We huddled in our homes, watching the relentless drizzle through our windows. The water in our collected buckets shimmered with an unsettling reddish tint. The local news offered no explanation, just vague reports of unusual atmospheric conditions. But we knew better. We could see the changes happening all around us. The leaves on the trees were turning a bruised purple. The stray cats we'd tried to feed lay listless, their fur matted with the strange coppery rain. This rain continues its gentle descent, a silent weeping from a sky that should be barren. We are drinking it in, unknowingly, as the water seeps into the ground, into our pipes, and the world around us is changing, subtly, horrifyingly, one metallic drop at a time. I can feel it in myself too, a strange lethargy, a growing unease, a faint, unfamiliar taste on my tongue that lingers, long after the rain stops falling. My memory was a sieve. Appointments vanished. Names evaporated the moment I heard them, and entire conversations dissolved into a hazy fog. It was a constant source of mild frustration, but I'd learned to live with it. Then, about a month ago, things started to shift. It began with trivialities. I remembered a throwaway line from a movie I hadn't thought about in years. The exact shade of blue of a car that had cut me off in traffic weeks ago. Then it escalated. I could recall entire conversations verbatim. The precise details of meals I'd eaten months prior. The intricate patterns on wallpaper in buildings I'd only visited once. Soon, every moment of my life became a vivid, inescapable tapestry. Every sensation, every word spoken to me, every fleeting thought I'd ever had played out in my mind with crystal clarity. It was overwhelming, a relentless barrage of the past crashing into the present, making it difficult to focus on anything new. Sleep became a torment, my mind replaying every awkward social interaction, every embarrassing mistake. But the truly terrifying part began a week later. Fleeting images, sensations that weren't mine. Smell of pipe tobacco, though no one I knew smoked. The sharp sting of a paper cut on a finger I didn't recognize. The overwhelming grief of a lost loved one. A face I couldn't place. These weren't my memories, yet they were as vivid and visceral as my own. They came in fragments at first, then longer, more coherent sequences. I saw snippets of other people's lives, a child's birthday party, A tense business meeting, a quiet moment of shared intimacy, their joys, their fears, their darkest secrets played out in my mind with unsettling clarity. I didn't know who these memories belonged to or why they were being forced into my consciousness. The lines between my own experiences and these borrowed ones are blurring. I find myself reacting to situations with emotions that don't feel like mine, recalling details of events I never witnessed. I look in the mirror and sometimes see a flicker of unfamiliarity in my own eyes. I'm drowning in the lives of others, and I have a growing, horrifying feeling that my own self is slowly being erased. The drive home had always been the drudgery at the end of my day. The predictable crawl of traffic on the highway, the familiar sequence of fast food signs and gas stations, the flickering streetlight on Elm Street that always seemed to be on the verge of burning out. Mundane, routine, until it wasn't. About 2 weeks ago, I started noticing subtle inconsistencies. A familiar billboard would be replaced by one I'd never seen before, only to revert to the original the next day. A street that should have led to a familiar neighborhood would dead end in an overgrown field. I chalked it up to stress, to my mind playing tricks after a long day. But the anomalies grew more pronounced. The landmarks remained the same. The old water tower, Miller's Hardware, the abandoned movie theater, but they felt different, slightly distorted, like a memory fading at the edges. Familiar streets would twist into cul-de-sacs that weren't there before, forcing me to backtrack. Buildings I'd known for years seemed to shift and change shape in my rearview mirror, their windows appearing in different places, their colours slightly altered. The other drivers, they became increasingly unsettling. Their cars were the same models I was used to seeing, but they were always silent, gliding along the road without a hint of engine noise. The drivers themselves were blurred, indistinct figures behind the windshields, their faces obscured by a shadow or a strange shimmering distortion. They never made eye contact. Time itself seemed to warp and stretch. What should have been a 30-minute commute home began to take an hour, then 2. I would pass the same landmarks multiple times. The flickering streetlight on Elm Street, the faded sign for a diner that had closed years ago, creating a sickening sense of déjà vu. I tried to call for help, but my phone displayed no service. The signal stubbornly absent no matter where I was. Panic began to set in. I was trapped in this distorted version of my familiar route, a nightmarish loop where the familiar became alien. I tried to take different turns to find an escape, but every road seemed to lead back to the same unsettling stretch of highway, the same silent cars, the same blurred faces. I have a growing, terrifying sense that I'm not just trying to get home anymore. I'm trying to escape something that has ensnared me in this endless, looping commute. Something that is slowly stripping away the familiar and replacing it with a creeping, unnameable dread. My apartment building has always been quiet, almost unnervingly so. You rarely hear your neighbors, a fact I initially appreciated, but lately the silence has taken on a different quality. It's not just the absence of sound, it's a heavy, expectant stillness like the air before a storm, except the storm never breaks. It started with the television. Turn it off, the screen would go black, and then After a few seconds, a faint static would begin to hum from the speakers. Not the sharp, crackling static of a lost signal, but a low, almost musical drone, like a chorus of whispers just beyond the threshold of hearing. I checked the connections, tried different outlets, even bought new cables. Nothing changed. The static always returned in the silence. Then it spread. My phone, when idle, would emit the same faint hum. My laptop speakers, even when completely shut down, would vibrate with the low, persistent drone. It was always there, just beneath the surface of absolute quiet, a constant, subtle reminder of something. The neighbors started acting strangely too. Mr. Henderson from 3B, always so jovial, now shuffled through the hallways with a vacant stare, his lips moving silently as if he were reciting something. Mrs. Davies from across the hall stopped tending her beloved widow plants, their vibrant green slowly fading to a sickly late yellow. When I tried to say hello, they would just look through me, their eyes distant and unfocused. The silence in the building has deepened. The usual muffled sounds of life, a dropped book, a running tap, have vanished entirely. It's just me and the pervasive low hum that seems to emanate from the very walls. I tried leaving, going outside, but the static followed. A faint drone in the ambient noise of the city, a subtle vibration in the air. Now, the static is changing. It's becoming more defined, the underlying whispers coalescing into something almost recognizable. Sometimes, I think I can make out words, faint and sibilant, just at the edge of my hearing. They sound like names. My name, and the silence in the apartment. It feels like it's listening, waiting for the static to finally speak. I found it nestled among the shells and sea glass on the beach. A single, perfectly white human tooth. It looked freshly pulled, with no signs of decay. A shiver traced its way down my spine. Curiosity, as always, won. I took it home, cleaned it, and placed it on my desk as a bizarre little souvenir. That night, I had a strange dream. I was in a dark room, and I could feel a persistent dull ache in my jaw, specifically where my wisdom teeth should be. When I woke, the ache lingered, phantom pain that felt disturbingly real. Over the next few days, the pain intensified, spreading to my other teeth. They felt loose, sensitive. Then came the scratching, a faint, rhythmic scraping sound coming from my desk. It started gently, almost imperceptible, but grew louder each night. I would lie in bed, listening to the unsettling sound of something dragging across the wooden surface. One morning, I found the tooth had moved. It was no longer where I had placed it. It was closer to the edge of the desk, as if it were trying to get away. The pain in my teeth is almost unbearable now. They feel like they're being pulled from the inside. And the scratching, it's constant. It follows me from room to room. Sometimes when the house is completely silent, I can feel a faint pressure on my gums. Phantom sensation of something pushing its way out. Keep looking at the souvenir tooth on my desk. I can't shake the feeling that it wants to go home, back to where it belongs. I have a horrifying suspicion that home is inside my mouth. My phone started displaying a missed call from a number I didn't recognize. No name, just a string of unfamiliar digits. I ignored it, figuring it was a wrong number or telemarketer. But the next day, there was another missed call from the same number, and the day after that. It became a daily occurrence, always at the same time, 3:17 p.m. Curiosity gnawed at me. Who could be calling so persistently? I considered answering, but a strange sense of unease held me back. What if it was someone I didn't want to talk to? What if it was something else? One evening, the phone rang at 3:17 p.m. while I was holding it. My finger hovered over the answer button. A cold dread washed over me, but I didn't answer. The ringing stopped, and a new missed call appeared in my history. The next day, instead of a missed call, there was a voicemail. My heart pounded as I pressed play. There was only silence. Just a faint, almost imperceptible hiss in the background. But as I listened closer, I could just make out a sound. A soft, rhythmic breathing, like someone standing close to the microphone. Very close. The calls and voicemails continue. The breathing has become heavier, more pronounced. Sometimes, I think I hear a faint whisper beneath the breath. A single syllable. My name. I've tried blocking the number, but it changes every day, just slightly, as if it's adapting. I don't know who or what is on the other end of that line, but they know my name, they know my schedule, and they call every day at 3:17 p.m., leaving only the sound of their breathing in the silence. And I have a terrifying feeling that one day, they won't just be breathing, they will speak. The house next door had been empty for years, the garden overgrown and wild. Then, one day, a new neighbor moved in, an elderly woman named Mrs. Albright. She was quiet and kept to herself, but she had an extraordinary passion for her garden. Within days, the neglected space was transformed into a vibrant explosion of color. Flowers bloomed in impossible hues, and strange exotic plants I'd never seen before thrived under her care. I would often see her working in the garden, even in the dead of night, illuminated by the pale moonlight. She never seemed to rest. Her movements were slow but constant, her hands perpetually in the soil. One evening, my cat went missing. I searched everywhere, finally peering over the fence into Mrs. Albright's garden. There, nestled among the luminous flowers, I saw something that made my blood run cold. It was my cat, or what was left of it. Its body was partially buried, and strange vines covered in vibrant blossoms were growing out of its fur. I called the police, but when they investigated, they found nothing. The garden was beautiful, peaceful, but there was no sign of my cat. Mrs. Albright simply smiled serenely and offered them tea. She continues to tend her garden, day and night. New, even more bizarre plants have appeared. Sometimes, when the wind is just right, I catch a strange, sweet scent wafting over the fence, a cloying aroma that makes me feel faintly nauseous. And sometimes, in the dead of night, when the moon is full, I see her standing amongst her strange flora, her silhouette still and unwavering, and I can't shake the horrifying feeling that her garden is not just growing plants, it's cultivating something else entirely, something that used to live next door. A few weeks ago, I started hearing a melody. It was faint at first, a simple, melancholic tune that seemed to drift in on the breeze. I couldn't place it, but it had a haunting quality that stayed with me. As the days passed, the melody grew clearer, more insistent. It seemed to follow me. I would hear it in the quiet moments of my day, a soft, ethereal music that no one else seemed to notice. I tried recording it, humming it to friends, searching online for similar tunes, but I found nothing. It was unique, and it was always just out of reach, like a half-forgotten dream. Then came the feeling of being watched, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, the sense of unseen eyes following my every move. Whenever I heard the melody, the feeling intensified. One night, I woke up to find the music playing softly in my bedroom. It seemed to be coming from the walls themselves. I pressed my ear against the plaster, and the melody vibrated through me, a low, resonant hum that seemed to seep into my bones. I tried to touch the source of the music, to find the speaker or the device that was playing it, but there was nothing. The walls were solid, the air empty. The melody was there, all around me, but untouchable, intangible. It's constant now. It never stops. It plays softly during the day, a haunting soundtrack to my increasingly paranoid existence, and it swells to a deafening crescendo at night, filling my dreams with its melancholic notes. I feel like I'm going mad, haunted by a melody that exists only for me, accompanied by the constant chilling sensation that whatever is playing it is getting closer. I found the invitation tucked under my door. It was simple, elegant, printed on heavy cream-colored paper. The script was ornate and unfamiliar. It read, "You are invited to attend the gathering at the old mill on the eve of the waning moon." There was no return address, no signature, just the cryptic message and the date. I dismissed it as a prank, some misplaced advertisement. I threw it in the trash, but the next day, another identical invitation was under my door, and the day after that. No matter how many times I discarded them, a new one would appear. The date on the invitation was a week away. As the day drew closer, I started seeing things, fleeting shadows in my peripheral vision, the feeling of being watched, whispers that seemed to fade away as soon as I focused on them. One evening, I saw a figure standing across the street, watching my apartment building. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by shadow. When I went to the window, it was gone. The eve of the waning moon arrived. I found another invitation on my doorstep. This one felt different. The paper was colder. The script seemed darker, almost wet. A strange compulsion washed over me. I felt an undeniable urge to go to the old mill, a place I'd never heard of. I tried to resist, but the pull was too strong. I found myself driving out of town, following a vague, unsettling sense of direction. The road grew darker, more winding, until I reached a dilapidated old mill. Silhouetted against the pale moonlight, the air was heavy with a strange, earthy scent. The doors of the mill were open, beckoning. A faint light flickered within. My feet moved on their own accord, carrying me towards the entrance. I can hear faint sounds coming from inside now. A low chanting, a rhythmic drumming, and as I step across the threshold, I have a terrifying certainty that this invitation was not a request. It was an inevitability.